business section of the meeting. Item A, approval of the September 13th, 2016 regular commission meeting minutes. You all have got a copy in your packet.
Mayor Pro Tem's I've gone over it, I find no changes that need to be made, and I'm making a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll second it.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item B, public hearing, New Mexico USDA Rural Development Funding Application, City of Raton, in partnership with Raton Waterworks. Mr. Berry?
Mayor Pro Tem, we do have Mr. Campbell from the, from Raton Waterworks to give you some facts on this application for funding, and it is applicable to the Raton filter treatment plant upgrades proposed for that facility.
Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, Commissioner, City Manager. This is actually, since this is federal funding, this is one step in the application process. The application was turned in during the first week of August. This meeting was a public comment meeting that was advertised in the World Journal 15 days ago, a little over 2 weeks ago. The project is being considered, that has actually already been discussed with this commission before, but is actually kind of a rehabilitation remodel project at the filter plant. It's been approximately 20 years, a little over. It was in 1995, the last substantial project up there. This will actually try to bring it up to current regs, even current OSHA standards, primarily consisting of some work to the pre-treatment system that's addressed in the preliminary engineering report that was sent in and has also been before this commission, the filtration system, chemical storage, and the electrical and instrumentation. This public hearing is actually one step if we go through the application process, and I guess at this point then we would open it up to comment from the public.
Anyone here wishing to make a comment? Let's see none.
Thank you.
Thank you. This was just a public hearing, correct?
Correct.
All right. Item C, deliberate and act on resolution 2016-44, the August 2016 financial report. My plan. Mr. Barry, somebody?
Mayor Pro Tem and Commission, in your packet this evening is our August financial report. If you'll take a look at our general fund summary, you'll see that our ending cash balance as of August 31st was $1,190,396, and then if we deduct our 1/12 reserve and just a little bit of money we have left in the designated street improvement GRT, our available cash, and actually that should be an 831, available cash 831, is $793,416.93. Our gross receipts, the check that we did receive in September was a good check. It was actually $482,000, and so you'll see that our budgeted GRT through September and our collected GRT put us at a 13.02% increase, and that's where we need to be. Like I said at the last meeting, going into November, we still want a couple more months coming off of the summer where we're still showing an increase in GRT before things start to taper off during the winter. So other than that, we did have one reconciling issue at the end of the month, and so I made a note on there. Since we switched to direct deposit in April, I guess I didn't foresee that we actually processed the payroll on August 31st, but it didn't actually post to our general ledger until September 1st, which is our actual payroll date. So it kind of threw things off at the end of the month, but then it actually reverses itself in September. So that should clear up here in the month of September. Other than that, is there any questions that anybody has regarding the report?
I have none. I have none.
And our costs through the end of August probably look like they're running a little bit higher, but that's because we actually did make payment to the self-insures fund for our first half of our insurance, and so that did hit in the month of August. And then also, we did have to make a prepayment on our health insurance since we did switch companies effective September 1st. We did have to prepay a month's insurance to Cigna. So this will actually be our first month coming up October 1st, where we've actually set up the payments to come out automatically. And then on the long-term disability and the life, we actually have to process that online as an electronic payment. So we went through a little bit of training last week, and we'll probably do some more this week just so that we can get that cycle going properly every month. And so we have been on the new insurance for almost a month. I think it's working well. I haven't gotten too much feedback yet from employees, but I don't think a lot of them have probably had to use the coverage yet. So other than that, I would recommend approval of Resolution 2016-44, approving the August 31st financial report.
I'll make that motion to approve resolution 2016-44.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve resolution 2016-44. All in favor, vote by the sign of aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item D, deliberate and act on resolution 2016-45, budget adjustment number 2 for fiscal year 2017. McLean?
Mayor Pro Tem and Commission, in your packet is budget adjustment number 2. This budget adjustment, I've also included a copy of a memo from DFA that kind of says, okay, the fiscal year budget's been approved, and what are some of the things that we need to do moving forward during the fiscal year. You'll note that, of course, they did state that, let's see, quarterly financial report must be submitted without negative cash balances in any fund, and that's something that we've talked about in the past, and I know Mayor Mance has really pushed for that, and so she'll be pleased to see that in the memo. But anyway, in order to avoid that, I'm requesting these budget adjustments so that as we have expenses for library grants, the closing out of the multimodal, what other project are we working on? Library grants, multimodal. Oh, and then of course our insurance, because we kind of had to make a large prepayment on the insurance until we kind of get a feel for how the automatic payments are going to work. I'm requesting these temporary transfers for the year, and I may or may not need to transfer the money for sure, but I don't want to get into a situation come this first quarterly report in September where we would have any negative balances in any of these funds. Because you will see if we have any negative balances, DFA would put us on a monthly reporting instead of a quarterly reporting. And so we definitely want to avoid that, but that's the nature of this budget adjustment number 2 request. Is there any questions?
No.
And hopefully the multimodal will be closing that out here probably in the next month. So while we did do some temporary transfers in the last fiscal year, I anticipate this last check to Anissa and also engineering analytics will probably be quite large. And so this temporary transfer would allow me to kind of pay out all those vendors, close out the project, and then we could transfer the monies back into the general fund.
Make a motion to approve resolution 2016-45, budget adjustment number 2 for FY17.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve budget adjustment number 2 for fiscal year 17, resolution 2016-45. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you,
Item,
Mrs.
yes,
Antonucci.
thank you. Item E, deliberate and act on recommendation to reject bid received for new fire station parking lot and recommendation to rebid the project. Mr. Berry?
Mayor Pro Tem and Commission, the fire department did ask for sealed bids for services related to Firehouse Number 2. That's the Troy Street Station. It included paving of the parking lots and drainage improvements, landscaping, a number of items there. And you have in your packet a letter from the fire chief with his recommendation regarding the bid. We have received one bid from WM Serrazio Company in the amount of $315,000 and some change. And as the chief points out, we have a budget of about $150,000. So that amount exceeds anything that we would be able to negotiate with that bidder, and it kind of ties our hands as far as the reward. Chief has made a recommendation, and I concur with his recommendation that we reject the bid, and then we'll ask for bids on a smaller scope of work, one that we would expect will come in within the available funds. Available funds are about $150,000. Again, that's fire fund, as we talked about, that we've used for construction of the station. So we're ready to go to bid again. We would ask the commission to reject the current bid of $315,727.91.
Okay, at this time, I'd entertain a motion to reject the bid received for the new fire station parking lot.
So move, I make a motion that we decline the 315,000 bid and submit it at a later time for a new scaled down bid.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second to reject the bid, current bid, and a recommendation to rebid the project. All in favor, vote by the sign of aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item F, deliberate and act on recommendation by Fire Chief Jim Matthews to terminate existing contract with the ambulance billing service Mediclaims and enter a new contract with Enhanced Management Services. Mr. Berry?
Mayor Pro Tem and Commission, Chief Matthews has evaluated the results for a company that the fire department uses for billing related to the ambulance service. And typically, the ambulance service is utilized. This company will send the bill to whoever the bill is due to. They will collect a portion of that billing, and the remainder will come to the city. I think the issue has been that collections have been lower than really an acceptable level, and the percentage that we pay to the company, which currently is Mediclaims, is probably higher than we would expect to pay. So the chief has done an evaluation, asked for proposals for EMS billing services, and brings a recommendation to the commission. And coincidentally, the recommendation is to award a contract for this billing service to a company that's EMS billing services. So this should be a better deal that would result in a higher percentage of collections at a lower price. So I'm gonna have to scan the letter here to figure out the percentages. And Michael Ann, I don't know if you have the numbers that we had talked about on what percentage is billed versus what is collected and the percentage that we paid to the company. But you have a package of information there. You have an agreement for ambulance billing services. In addition, EMS, which stands for Enhanced Management Services, Inc., would be able to bill additional services such as some of our wildland fire responses. Michael Ann, I don't know if you can tell the commission maybe some of the percentages that we
Sure.
have discussed.
Mayor Pro Tem and Commission, I did provide you with a copy of our Mediclaims, kind of an end-of-year report that was for fiscal year 16. You'll see that the charges for past fiscal year billable charges were $709,000, a little over $709,000. Of that, we collected, or medical claims collected, $440,813.18. which is about a 62% was collected of that was billable charges. And then the second page kind of gives a breakdown of the aging of the various accounts. And so you'll see our total accounts receivable as of June 30th was a little over $251,000. And the aging, I would say 61 to 90 days would be pretty average for insurances, because it does take a while to bill those and receive payment back on insurance. But you will see in the insurance row, there isn't anything past 90 days. So there is quite a bit under the patient, 151 days plus, that is probably private pay, no insurance. And so a lot of those accounts do go uncollectible, which is unfortunate. But with our current billing company, MediClaims, they really make 3 attempts to collect, and then after the 3rd try, they turn it back over to us as uncollectible, and there's no further collection activity. With this new company, we would actually pick the collection agency that we want, but they would automatically send those claims to that collection agency, which would probably report it to credit reporting agencies, and there would be a little bit more aggressive collection on that. So generally, when you deal with a collection agency, you're not going to get 100%. They'll probably keep a percentage of the collected fees, so it might be like 30 cents on the dollar or something like that. But, you know, it's better than nothing. And so I came across in my file, I had an article from 2007, and interesting enough, it said local governments nationwide carry about $40 billion in delinquent accounts for utility bills, court fines, taxes, and other receivables. So not only do we have an issue with collections on ambulance, but we also do with our municipal court fines. And so, you know, if you don't have a collection agency or sufficient staff that can actually be making those collection calls, a lot of that money just sits on the books for years. And so, you know, as budgets get tight, I think this is one of the ways that we need to be looking at to try to collect some of this money to help improve our coffers. So it was interesting, too, when I was looking at these reports of the insurance carriers that pay, 48% of the insurance billed is Medicare. So that's a large portion of it, and then there's pages and pages of other carriers. But we do currently, I know Jim Matthews' letter said we pay 6% to MediClaims, but it's actually, we pay them 8% right now in the contract that we have with them. So last year we paid MediClaims close to $40,000 for the fees owed to them on what was collected. So, and then in the budget, let's see, our annual ambulance revenues, they have declined over the years. I know probably 5-6 years ago, we were probably collecting closer to $500,000 a year. And of course, that's not all MediClaims' fault. People just don't pay their bills. And if they know there's no repercussions and nobody's going to come after them, they just simply don't pay. So I'd say last year we collected closer to about $450,000, and that's what we've budgeted for this year. So if this new billing company with a little bit more aggressive collections, you know, I'd like to see us collecting closer to $500,000 or more. So it would really help our budget.
Now, we do have a good recommendation as per the letter from Trinidad Ambulance Service that has used EMS, and they have reported that their collections have increased 30%. I would not expect a 30% increase, but a 10% increase could really make a big difference to our emergency services department.
So I think procedurally, if the commission does vote tonight to switch companies in our current contract with MediClaims, it does require a 30-day notice. And then it also had a a section that said upon 30-day written notice that we would then, all payments and revenue received by the city for fees billed by Mediclaims shall be reported by the city for an additional 90 days after Mediclaims services are terminated. So there would be a period there that we're kind of working with both companies to kind of close out the Mediclaims stuff that's been billed. But other than that, I didn't see anything in the current contract beyond that.
And I would just point out on page 9 in paragraph 10 or section 10, compensation, they're proposing 7.5% fee for all revenues collected. And as Michael Ann had said, our current billing company, Mediclaims, charges 8%. So a little bit of a break on the percentage.
When we talked with Chief Matthews, and the way he explained it, it's a no-win situation for us.
I mean, we would hope, when we entered into the contract with Mediclaims back in 2000, I've got it here somewhere, 2003, January of 2003, prior to that, the city actually was doing all of the billing themselves, and so our collection rate at that time was really, really low. And so, 2003, the city switched to a billing company, and it really improved the collections significantly. So it does help to contract with people that have that expertise. Insurance companies, all of that could be really difficult if you don't know what you're doing.
And that may be true in the case of Trinidad Ambulance Service too. They may have been billing internally, and that's tough.
I don't know what their prior system was.
Yeah.
But at the time, we did this in 2003, it was an RFP, but over the years, because the procurement limits are raised now to the 60,000, there wouldn't be a need for a professional service to go out for RFP. Unless, of course, maybe in year one, we start seeing that the fees are
Right.
approaching 60,000, we would probably need to consider bidding or doing an RFP maybe the following year. But we'll have to watch that.
Anyway, I concur with the chief's recommendation to award a contract to EMS Billing Services, enter into the contract that's attached.
Did you give a recommendation on an actual effective date? Or, I know this current agreement in your packet does say November 1st, but
Yeah, I think
we
we just-
received this back in August, so we may have to push that back a little bit.
I think what would be reasonable is January 1st, and we start the calendar year under this contract is what we had discussed. So, yeah, we would ask that the commission make it effective January 1st.
Make the new contract effective.
The new
January.
contract 2017, that'll give us time to put out the notifications as required and make the transition.
Okay, I would entertain a motion
I'll
to,
make that motion to accept and approve recommendations to reject bid received from new fire station, wrong one.
it's all right.
To terminate the existing contract with ambulance billing service, Medicare claims, and enter into a new contract with enhanced management services with the new date of
January 1st, 2017.
January 1st, 2017.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to terminate the existing contract and enter into a new contract with Enhanced Management Services beginning January 1st. Trish, could we have a roll call vote on that, please?
Commissioner Chavez?
Yes.
Commissioner Giacomo?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Segata?
Yes, motion passes. Thank you. Item G, deliberate and act on legislative funding use for chip sealing recommendation. Mr. Berry.
Mayor Pro Tem and Commission, in your package, you have by memorandum discussing a potential street improvement project, and it would be funded with 2016 legislative funding. The legislature did award $150,000 to the city of Raton for street improvements, and this is our recommendation to the commission. So you see a list of streets that we would recommend the chip seal resurfacing method be applied to, and that includes Pecos, Mora, a section of South 4th Street, Savage Avenue, and a section of Dwyer Avenue. Those are good candidate streets for a chip seal type of treatment. They're streets that, in my 30 years around the city of Raton, really have not received any type of surfacing, really minimal maintenance on those streets. And this would extend the life of those streets significantly. If you remember last summer, we chip sealed about 19 blocks in the Maxwell South Addition generally, and that process, I think, was very successful, and it's cost effective. And as you see from the memo, the cost of doing the chip seal is about a little over $4.50 a square yard, whereas if we look at a thin overlay, we're looking at over $10 a square yard. And there are places where a thin overlay is appropriate, like the downtown streets that we've been working on. But these, I think, are good candidate streets for that. We have a lot of good candidate streets, actually, but these are ones that, to me, are on the priority list. And so we would recommend that method. And as you see, we're recommending spending about $130,000 out of 150 and maintain a little balance there. And if we get into something as we are going along, we have a little extra money to deal with. But we would also like to look at maintaining some balance for other projects, such as a crack sealing project on streets. That we've talked about the crack sealing before. We have not been able to complete crack sealing in the last couple of years. We've got streets that really would benefit from that treatment. We've got some work planned on South First Street to complete street improvements in that area. There is a match required, so possibly we use it in projects like the Rio Grande intersection, which we would look at doing early next summer. The procurement on this, as we spell out, is all done under existing state purchasing agreements. There are 3 different contractors. There's an existing contract for the aggregate that's used in the process, one for the asphalt emulsion, and then one for the construction. So we would procure under those 3 contracts. To get the aggregate produced, and it is essentially the 1st of October, we have a very short window to get the aggregate produced, get it delivered, and pull off the project. If we can't do this, the weather allows, we would simply do this project next May or next June. So because it is a 2016 authorization, we're really not under any kind of time crunch on it. And there is one additional concern as far as getting it done in October, and that's where we're standing as far as our grant agreement with the state. Jason Phillips is here. He's our liaison with state government as far as that grant agreement, and I think Jason did have a discussion with someone down there about where we're standing. That could be an additional delay. So Jason, I don't know if you could give us a brief on the availability of the funds.
These funds were part of a severance tax bond sale back in July. Grant agreements generally have been created by the DOT, signed off by their legal counsel, then they're sent to us for signature. That occurred on September 1st. They were forwarded to District 4 in Las Vegas, and on September 4th, District 4 forwarded them back to Santa Fe for the Cabinet Secretary's signature. As of yesterday, they were unable to locate our grant agreements in DOT at Santa Fe. So if they are not able to route those down somehow, we start the process over with new grant agreements. Their legal counsel signs them, the mayor signs them, and we start this process again. But we're optimistic maybe they just ended up in the wrong mailbox and they can track them down. If so, I think it's realistic that we can get this work done before the snow flies. If we have to restart this process, we probably move to spring.
Which is not a big deal. We're not out anything by doing that. Our public works crew has put in an extensive amount of work in prepping these areas for the chip seal, but it's still good next year. So we would like to get the approval of the commission to proceed along those lines and set that up. Now, I would say that's our recommendation. There are a lot of street improvements needed in the city of Raton. This is one option. It is my recommendation to you, but there are other options as far as street improvements. Now, certainly take the direction of the commission on how to proceed.
Any questions for either of these gentlemen?
I think we should concur with the memorandum and make that motion, or it's not a motion, actually. I'm gonna concur with this.
We would like to have a motion and a vote from the commission to authorize us to proceed along. There's not a sealed bid to approve here, but we would like to, get a vote of the commission to proceed as outlined in the memo.
So move.
Okay, we have a motion.
Second.
And a second to act on legislative funding for the chip sealing recommendation provided by Mr. Berry. All in favor, vote by the sign of aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item H, city manager's report. Mr. Berry.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Commission, I had reported that the Public Works crew has really put out exceptional effort on this prep work. That consists of patching potholes or deviations in the asphalt surface, repair of some concrete surfaces, cleaning. A lot of these streets have an accumulation of sediment that has to be removed, and there has been a lot of work done. And I think the residents in these areas have seen a pretty significant effort from Public Works crew in prepping these streets. And they are streets that have not got much attention over the years, badly needed. I would like to also give my thanks to the Public Works crew for that, and also they had cleaned up one home site, which a burned home located on Santa Fe Drive has been a problem for us for a while. That was cleaned up in the last 2 weeks. That's one of the sites that Chief Matthews had showed the commission a couple of meetings ago that we had targeted for cleanup. So that one is done. We will have some follow-up action with the landowners that were not able to clean that up on their own, and we'll move along to other locations. I would point out that Chief Burke did line up some community service and helped on that lot, and has helped really in a number of places throughout town, and is getting use out of community service. So good job for Chief Burke. As far as our solid waste goes, we have been working on the landfill. The contractors completed placement of the barrier soil layer and the topsoil layer at the landfill. Our crew has placed temporary seeding over the 22 acres of the landfill consisting of winter wheat. We would be required to come back probably in May and place permanent seeding and mulch, but we are hoping to get a cover crop on that this fall and throughout the spring before we place the permanent seeding. We will also have to add the permanent seeding to the borrow areas, and that's about another additional 12, 14 acres. So a big project there coming up on that, but a big accomplishment as far as reclaiming the landfill. The commissioners do have on your desk an article in regard to bear-proof dumpsters. This was from the New Mexico Game and Fish newsletter, and they had passed this along to us. And Mayor Pro Tem Sagata had told me before the meeting that he actually saw a report on the bear-proof dumpsters on one of the Albuquerque news channels this weekend. So a little acknowledgement there for a project that has really been successful through the summer. We've really seen a reduction in bear activity in most of the areas where we've seen a lot of bear activity in past years. There is some bears moving around right now, so where we do not have the bear-proof dumpsters, of course, the bears are still making some messes there, and residents can help us with that, but we're getting to the time of year where that slows down a lot. To report to the commission on where we're at on construction projects, we did talk about construction of the multimodal facility at the last meeting, and we noted there was unacceptable progress by the contractor. We did have a meeting with the contractor, and they responded very well. The progress has picked up remarkably, and the project will likely be completed by the end of next week. There are a couple of chores left to be done, but we did get the parking lot paved today. There is some a concrete apron to be constructed there, and a couple of minor things to finish the project. But essentially, the project is close to substantial completion now. So we would estimate the end of next week will be done. The downtown area repaving project has been completed. In that project, we resurfaced the blocks between South Second Street and South First Street on Apache Avenue, on Cook Avenue, and Savage Avenue. That project has been completed. I think it's a great improvement for the downtown area. Ripley Park parking area was also repaved. We do have a task remaining on that. We're going to place parking bumpers and pavement markings on that. We will do this with our crew, and we'll go back and place pavement markings on the downtown avenues as well. We've been working on a couple of projects at the airport, specifically the sliding gate and the fuel tank improvements that we had talked about at previous meetings. We're still working with contractors as far as contract documents. I think we're ready to issue a notice to proceed to both contractors, and we would look at work on those two projects over the next month or two. In your packet or on your table, you do have a report from Department of Finance Administration, actually a memorandum, and it has to do with capital outlay. And this is issued by the Cabinet Secretary designate of capital outlay to Cabinet Secretaries and Administrative Service Division Directors. It funneled down to us, and I provided for the commission, and I'll read one part of it for you. It says, effective immediately, all executive branch state agencies are directed to freeze capital outlay projects that have no activity, excluding projects authorized in 2016. And then it goes on to detail what that means to freeze that. But basically, in advance of the legislature meeting, a lot of the capital outlay from previous years prior to 2016 are going to be held up by these various state agencies that are not going to flow. And of course, we had talked about last time with the closing, while the elimination of the state from our visitor center, that's probably not the last thing that we're going to see that's budget related, and I think we'll see more of this as we get closer to the regular session. But what that means for Raton, we don't have a lot of capital outlay projects that are going. Essentially, most of ours have been closed out. We did mention that from the 2016 legislature, we had $150,000 for the chip seal project, and this memorandum says that it is excluded. It should not be affected. Then we also have the funds for the Lake Maloya project. That was $300,000. That does go back a couple of years. Most of that has been expended. I think to get to the bottom line, Mr. Campbell had put together some statistics for us. I think we have about $40,000 of those funds remaining, which has been obligated by the state engineer. So we feel that those funds will not be affected either. But we wanted to bring this to the attention of the commission. And that's all I have, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, sir. Fellow commissioners, any comments you'd like to make at this time? None? None? Having concluded the business portion of this meeting stands adjourned. Thank you.